This is a digital training video provided by LCE Graphics. You can reach us at lcegraphics.com or call us at 1-800-634-2176. Now this video is going to be a get acquainted video introducing you to the Hohner 43.6. Now there are adjustments and more details that are found in the instruction manuals, which we provide to our customers who purchase machines from us, and we have available for sale if you wish to order them. Now let's start first of all with the wire. On the 5000 system, you have a wire sensing system. The way this works, as you can see here, is you have a tensioner wheel, and then inside here a wheel that's driven by the wire. As the wire passes through this unit, it rotates the encoder wheel, which you can see right here, and then there's a sensor right above it, and that sensor sometimes can get dusty or dirty and needs to be blown out or cleaned. It can be blown out with compressed air, not high pressure, and avoid using high compressed air that maybe have moisture or water in it, but you can blow the dust out with it, and that's typically what causes your code that tells you you're out of wire when you're not. Usually when this unit tells you you're out of wire, you still have a little wire left in the guide and the stitch head to continue running for maybe 10 or 15 booklets. Now if you'll notice here below the sensor, there's what's called a cleaner and oiler unit. You can use a couple of drops of 3-in-1 oil on this felt pad every morning when the machine is started up, and from time to time it's a good idea to rotate the felt pads by just turning them. And what that does, it gets a clean area of the felt pads, and when they get completely dirty, you can take them, remove that bolt, take the felt pads on and flip them over and use them again, and then when they're done you can replace them with new felt pads. Now this wire guide, it's really important to have it lined up in the right position. Make sure that the wire doesn't get caught on the spool. Also, you have the tightening screw right there, the tensioning. Make sure that it's tight so that the wire will not rotate with the guide. Now next is your anti-reverse. That's that unit right there. You have, if you're going to pull the wire out of the stitch head, you're going to have to pull that down to pull the wire out, because what that does, it keeps the wire from going back up. That's a very important part. Now next down the stitch head, now we have the adjustment knob. Now what that does is that helps us adjust the length of the stitch and to compensate for thicker and thinner booklets. Refer to your manual as far as direction to turn that, but it also has a nomenclature on the stitch head itself that tells you which way to turn it for the smaller and larger stitch, as you can see it right there. Now the next thing is right here with a screw, the spring on it. That's a tension adjustment for the clamp, and that is the clamp. When you turn that, just like we just did, that releases the drive wheel so the wire will not pass through the stitch head. And that's one thing you're going to have to do, as you've learned earlier in one of our videos, for threading the wire. Now the next thing that you have is the adjustment for equalizing the length of the legs. There's a dial, if you can see that right there, there's a round serrated dial, and what that does, you turn that dial to move the stitch holder left to right, and that lengthens or shortens one leg or the other to help you equalize the legs on the stitch. Now to remove the former, you have to pull back on the spring tension unit and then pull the former out. And that's your stitch former. Sometimes if you have a jam or problems with a stitch head, you may want to take a look at this and make sure that there's no wire jammed inside of it, or there's nothing broken inside the former, because if there is, it will continue to drop stitches. Now to insert the former back in, it fits inside the notch that's in the stitch head, you can see there, and then the tensioner goes back on it. It's real important when you put this together to take your time and make sure you put it back together properly. Otherwise, you'll have problems with it and it won't stitch properly. Now below there, you have the clincher. You see that chrome guide? The clincher is the part underneath that comes up. It has a mechanical drive arm that pushes the clincher up. It's two triangular shaped pawls that push up on the bottom of the stitch and close the stitch. And those are very important, and to make sure that your stitch head is aligned with your clincher. If you'll notice, on the former band, the former itself should always be centered on the clincher plate. So if you're having a problem with your stitch closing properly, just look down and see if you line up your former with the clincher plate underneath, and make sure that it's centered as this one is. Now, the next thing is your wire straightening adjustment. Right at the very bottom, you have a small adjustment dial down there that you can adjust to straighten the wire. Be very careful using this adjustment. Straightening the wire is important though, because on a Hohner stitch head, you straighten the wire at the very end just before it enters the former. And what that does, it allows the wire to go straight into the former. And if you have problems with it jamming down here at the bottom, where the wire seems to be buckling up, most likely that's what it is, that your wire straightener needs to be adjusted. Now, as far as other details and oiling and lubing, on the stitch heads, Hohner recommends grease, and we recommend using Super Lube, which is really about the best grease that you can use, and we always provide Super Lube to our customers. If you have any questions, not that we're selling Super Lube, because we don't, but this is a very good lubricant for the stitch heads, synthetic grease. It works really well. You don't need very much, that's a small amount. But you can refer to your manual for frequency and the amount of times you need to grease your stitch heads. It's always best to remove them and clean them. Now, the next thing we have is the adjustment tool. Now, what this tool does, this is your tool for driving the wire through. Now, in another video that we've already done, it shows you how to thread your wire, but when you turn that tool, it actually turns the driver wheel and feeds the wire down through the guide tube into the wire straightening unit, so that you can thread your heads when you first get started. Now, one thing to remember about Hohners is once you get the wire threaded, sometimes it'll take 3 to 4 stitches before it actually starts stapling properly. So you need to run 3 or 4 test booklets and then look at the stitch again to make sure that it's stitching properly before you proceed. Also, on the wire guide, now there are different schools of thought, but Duplo recommends that you run the wire from underneath the spool. You'll notice that in your manuals, but it's also real important to make sure that your guide lines up with the center of the spool as closely as possible, because as your stitch heads move in and out, they'll actually change position of the wire from the spool. So you want to keep that in mind, because sometimes what can happen is your spool, if your guide is too far over to one side, it can actually cause a wire to lap off the spool and create a problem with jamming wire. Now again, if you have any further questions, this completes our Get Acquainted video of the 43.6 stitch heads for the Duplo 5000 systems. Please refer to your manual for the Hohner stitch heads, and you can always call us if you have any questions about these systems. Thank you very much.